Hello again, I am Blunty. Today, according to the people who own the trademark, is Pokemon Day. They've done this for a few years now, asking people to share their precious Pokemon memories on Twitter and such. But me, I want to look forward to what's coming, or what may be coming, allegedly. Now, as far back as September 2016, when in an interview with the Wall Street Journal, Pokemon Company executive Mr. Ishihara said they were very interested in the Nintendo Switch, then still only known by its codename, the Nintendo NX. "We will make games for the NX," was the statement, which left little room for doubt that we will see Pokemon titles on Nintendo's new gadget. The publication MCV reported that the new Pokemon game for the NX will come from Game Freak, who are, of course, the development studio behind every last one of the core RPG games. The real Pokemon games, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, yes, some of the spin-offs are okay, but I've never been that much interested in them. And with the 3DS titles, Pokemon Sun and Pokemon Moon, then only weeks from release at the time the reports were being made, it was a tempting and simple leap to make the assumption that the new Game Freak developed game for the Nintendo Switch may just be their third pillar game, much like Pokemon Yellow, Pokemon Crystal, and Pokemon Emerald before it. And while not every generational pair of Pokemon games has been accompanied by an enhanced third follow-up, they are fan favourites because of the extra polish and features that came with them. Speaking personally, I have particularly fond memories of Pokemon Crystal. Unconfirmed and unsourced rumours and reports later trickled out, naming this conjectured third game to follow Sun and Moon as Pokemon Stars, which in fact quickly caught on and has now become the de facto name for fans to talk about what it may be, and indeed if it may be. A little learning from history and fairly logical progressions have led to the belief that it will be a graphically enhanced version of Sun and Moon. It would perhaps add to the world map with extra islands, or perhaps even a trip to the mainland to revisit Kanto again. As of course, in Sun and Moon, Kanto, the location of the original Pokemon games, Red, Green, Blue and Yellow, is referred to frequently, and with a few main characters having moved directly from there, with at least one main character taking their first trip to Kanto to explore. Much like Pokemon Silver and Pokemon Gold, some hope we can go back to Kanto after the main quest line and once more revisit an enhanced version of the world where it all began 20-odd years ago. Still more rumours and supposed insider information claims that Pokemon Stars would feature an extra 20 Pokemon added to the roster of wild Pokemon available in the overworld. And finally, it seems likely that Pokemon Stars would release sometime in November. Pokemon has historically always been a huge system seller. Every time a new Pokemon series launches, the handheld console it lives on saw a big sales boost. And with the Nintendo Switch facing its first Christmas this year, it wouldn't come as a shock that Nintendo would very much like to line up some well-proven system seller game titles behind it to give it the strong holiday season it will need to really gather momentum. This is of course also why Super Mario Odyssey is being withheld until the holiday season, despite it being a strong but not unbroken, thanks to the Wii, tradition of a new Nintendo console launching with a new Mario game. But there is of course a big difference between the supposed Pokemon Stars following up Sun and Moon compared to the other third-tier games we've had. That being, of course, the Switch is an entirely new machine, inherently different not just from a power standpoint, but from an architecture standpoint. Which means, instead of the relatively minor tweaks and enhancement games like Yellow and Emerald and Crystal got, Pokemon Stars would have to be reassembled from the ground up to live on the new hardware. And not just that, but pretty much every art asset in the game would have to be redone in high resolution as well, of course. It's a pretty labour-intensive job. And a couple of days ago, in an interview, Ishihara went once more on record about Pokemon games on the Switch, saying that, "So far Pokemon has been developed for complete handheld game machines. It is a good point of a mobile game to exchange and battle Pokemon with friends outside and play. On the other hand, the Switch is a home game machine that can be bought out, and its properties are slightly different from those of portable machine. The screen is a bit bigger, and the spec is also high, therefore if you are going to bring Pokemon to the Switch, do not do it as it is." These comments are, of course, open to interpretation, and there's been a lot of debate about exactly what he means by all that. Some think it means that the Switch Pokemon game will be something entirely new, perhaps even yet another one of the gimmick spin-off games, which would mean once more denying fans screaming for a decade and a half now for a mainline Pokemon RPG represented in full glory under the power of a home console. There is absolutely no doubt that fans want this. It's just the arrogance of the Pokemon Company and Game Freak that has kept it from us, insisting that Pokemon can only work really well as a handheld game because you have to go out and meet people in the real world and trade it. Well, for a start, you can do that with the Switch. Secondly, there are tons, and I mean tons of people who love and play Pokemon who just do it in the... I can't remember the last time I actually played Pokemon out and about. With the advent of online trading, for example, it's rendered more or less pointless. You don't need to go out and about with it anymore. It's nice to be able to when you go to Pokemon events and stuff, and again, you can still do that with the Switch, so what's the argument against it again? But some others say, as indeed I have just been drawing a line to, it may just mean that as a third-tier game, something like Pokemon Stars needs a lot more thought and work put into it than the likes of Emerald did. Then, of course, there's the fact that while data mining Pokemon Sun and Moon, people came across Pokemon 3D character models and animations that were in fact never used in the actual games themselves, yet they remained in the code. Some conjecture that these assets are indications that a Switch companion game was being built in parallel with Pokemon Sun and Moon. At least through part of its development, because why else spend the man-hours needed to create these models and animations that weren't even used in the 3DS games, much less leave their traces right in the finalized game code? It could be just a dropped feature. Some say it was for letting Pokemon walk beside you in the overworld, as has happened in a few other main titles, but not used here for performance reasons on the 3DS. With Sun and Moon pushing the 3DS so hard it already has performance issues in several areas. Then, there's also the fact that several superb features from Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, the games preceding Sun and Moon, were removed. Specifically, those features that had mechanics and interfaces that relied specifically on the lower touchscreen. And Sun and Moon's use of the lower touchscreen was severely dumbed down and very limited in comparison. And many think this is in preparation for making it easy to shift all the core functions over to the Switch, a single-screen device, where any such secondary feature would have to be pulled up over the main screen like any other menu. For me, at least, this is the clearest evidence of preparations being made for the series to shift over to Switch. I mean, why else, after having made such damn fine use of the touchscreen in recent games, would Sun and Moon take such a significant step backwards to nearly completely retard the reliance on it as a feature inherent to even secondary game mechanics? There's yet more supposed evidence for a follow-up game, like a hidden cutscene found by hackers, although this doesn't specifically point towards a Switch version. It could be there for any number of reasons to be legitimately unlocked later in the future. But there can be no doubt that Pokemon Stars, or whatever it gets called when, or indeed if it ever sees the light of day, is already highly anticipated. And as I've said before, despite Nintendo covering their bets and assuring investors by publicly stating that the 3DS won't be abandoned or replaced by this new console capable of being a far superior handheld device, I am in no doubt that if the Nintendo Switch is a commercial success, the 3DS line, like the Game Boy line before it, which Nintendo also claimed wasn't going anywhere when the DS came out, will be quickly shoved aside. It makes little sense for a company like Nintendo to spend resources on two different handheld machines. One of them has to die. And if the Switch wins in this fight, it will of course be the only place a mainline Pokemon game can exist. But beyond all of that, I personally think it'd be idiotic for Nintendo, the Pokemon Company, and Game Freak to ignore the opportunity here. Pokemon always has been a system seller, and Nintendo really need the Switch to be successful. And from everything from making it easy to port to from other consoles, to courting third-party and indie developers with enticements like very inexpensive dev units, Nintendo are so far saying the right things and smiling the right smiles, but it is a simple fact they need to keep the momentum going. They need this thing to gather speed. They need it to be unstoppable. They cannot let what happened to the Wii U happen to this machine. And what better way to keep up the momentum than to hit Christmas with Mario and Pokemon flags flying above the Nintendo Switch? For all the will they, won't they rumors and reports and leaks and all that kind of stuff, I honestly do think it would be silly to miss this opportunity. I personally strongly suspect, and indeed expect, we will see Pokemon Stars, or whatever it winds up being called, hit shelves in the holiday season this year. When we're going to first hear about it, and in any official confirmed manner is still up for debate, maybe we'll hear about it as early as E3. but it will probably follow along the usual lines of leaks for Pokemon games, that being our first real information will come from the Japanese magazine Korokoro. But for now, we just have to wait and see. They are not going to talk about it this early because they don't want to destroy the momentum of anything else right now. So what do you reckon? Thanks for watching, I am Blunty, and I will catch you next time.